Welcome to Changelog, where we explore the latest updates, enhancements, and changes to New Relic itself. In each episode, we dig into the new features and functionalities as told by the people who envisioned, shaped, and even coded them. We discuss the inspiration and the data behind the development, as well as common use cases and applications. I'm Leon Adato, one of the New Relic DevRel advocates, and joining me today are Ralph Bodenner. He is on my notes I have it, Principal Product Manager. There we go. Hey, well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we also have Alex Jones, who is a senior product manager. Yeah?
Yes, that is correct.
I got that right. Okay, I didn't mistitle anybody along the way. Well, I really want to thank both of you for being on the show. And I know that we have a thing to talk about, and that's exciting, but I also want to, show up as our full selves. So tell us a little bit about, what your title is, what it means, what you do here at New Relic, but also something that's going on in your life, something that's fun and exciting and interesting beyond the really fun, exciting, interesting work that we do here. Alex, why don't you start us off?
Yes, so my title is I'm a senior product manager for the query language development. And what our group does is essentially builds out all things NERCL to help customers build or code any type of query they'd like and ask any questions of the data. Myself, I recently purchased a home and I'm living in Denver, so I'm learning about all the trials and tribulations of home ownership. And we had so much rain recently, so we have some leaky windows that I need to fix. So people are coming by right after this call.
Oh, it's the
Good
money
times.
pit. Good times. Always fun. All right. Well, it's good to have you on the show. And yeah, we can commiserate afterward about homeownership. Okay, Ralph, tell us a little bit about your title and what's going on in your life.
Sure thing. I'm a principal product manager. I've been at New Relic for a while. Used to be an engineer, and I decided I wanted to work with everybody in the company and all of our customers. And so
At the
I,
same
I became a
time.
product manager at the same time, sometimes in the same meeting. And so I work on the logging area. And so our special challenge is to take all of the logs. And to be honest, most logs are kind of bad. Um, take all those logs and help our customers get a lot of value out of them. And so that's a really interesting challenge because it's technically difficult. It's there's a lot of there's like every kind of challenge in making logs useful. So as a PM, it's pretty cool. I get to talk to big customers, small customers, and I'm in this to help people be able to do really good work. That's always why I've been interested in being a PM and being an engineering leader before that. So it's very exciting. I don't have a SoundCloud, but what I am doing this weekend is I'm going to go run a long run in the woods for fun, and I'm hoping to make it to the finish line without them having to drag me off the mountain. So that's what's happening for me lately.
Better you than me. Wonderful. Well, I I do hope you make it. I can't wait to hear how it goes.
Thank you.
Once again, pictures or it never happened. So let us know. All right. Fantastic. All right, so on to work. Here on Changelog, we have talked about logs a bunch of times because, as Ralph, as you mentioned, logs are hard and sometimes messy. And we've also talked about New Relic query language, or what we call NERCL. That's not the name of my kitten. That is actually the name of, or at least what we call our query language. But today we've got this it's a dessert topping, it's a floor wax kind of thing where we're talking about NERCL and logs and how they go together and how they solve very particular problems. And before we talk about what New Relic is doing, I want to sort of frame the pain points or the issues we're addressing. So, Alex, again, start us up. Tell me a little bit about what were the problems we were hearing about from customers that we wanted to try to make better.
Yes, so New Relic stores all types of data, from metrics, logs, events, and originally when you're querying you are saying from my logs, from my transactions, give me this data. And it's lightning fast, and it helps make sure your application's up and running. What we found, though, is that not always do people send data to the same place, but it does relate to one another. It's like, what, you can't put all your data into one transaction event? No, people are putting data about their how their application is running and how fast that is, but also data on all their logs and data about different their servers, how fast they're going, their CPU percentage, and all of these do relate. There's certain fields that you could combine them on, you could join them on. So one of the top requests customers have been saying is, why can't I compare data from my logs with data from my transactions? They both have a container ID, or they both have a host name. If I could just compare the two and make a correlation and find out, which host is working is the slowest based on the log information we got, that would be fantastic. So that's one of the biggest problems we've heard today.
Nice. Okay. Are we addressing any other issues today? Ralph?
Yeah. I think to add on to what Alex said, it used to be that we would do a bunch of work in our own UIs to try to help you correlate this data,
Mhm.
but ultimately we build UIs that can do that for a few cases, and it's really powerful and it's useful. But what we're talking about today just gives so much freedom to our customers to do things we haven't thought of yet, things we haven't built an experience for, things that works with their own custom data. So it just takes the power level up like a whole another level for what people can do. The other thing that we're talking about today is just a way to enrich some of the data that you're sending. And a lot of the time, the data that we're talking about comes in from logs, but it could apply elsewhere. So you can look at an IP address that's in your logs, and you can kind of pull that out and say, I want to go look up this IP address and get all the geographic information I can find about it. Like, where do we think this IP address is located in the world? And then you can enrich your logs with that data, so that now instead of looking at a bunch of numbers, I can say, well, the transactions I'm logging from my retail store, they're all coming from these parts of the world. And oh, look, something changed this week. All of a sudden, we're doing a lot of sales in Illinois, and I don't know why. That gives you something interesting to look at. And there's a lot of use cases for why knowing those geographies is pretty interesting.
Sure.
So that's exciting.
Yeah, and we have customers with a lot of moving equipment, whether it's because of IoT sensors or whatever it is, and knowing, where that device is at a given moment, if the IP address is indicating that, is pretty useful also. But yeah, all of that. Okay, cool. So I love all of that. I love those pain points. But those are the problems. What are we doing to make it better? And I'm gonna throw it back to Alex again. And we talked about they have all this data and things like that. So what specifically are we doing to remove the friction or the toil? I know we like to say that a lot here. And make the day better with that.
Yes. So we're really excited to announce that Joins is generally available for customers to use. So essentially, it's a SubQuery join. We introduced SubQueries a while ago, and you can run a query within a query. So what we're introducing now is you can run a query, get results up to 2,000, and give you a table. And then you can join that, similar to a SQL join, with an outer query. Mm-hmm. And that correlation will greatly help you solve many of your problems. You can join your metrics to transactions. You can join metrics to metrics. You can have up to 3 subquery joins happening. So you can have a join within a join within a join within a join. So yeah, it's very exciting. I know this is going to help finally correlate your data across your entire systems, because New Relic is made to support not only your log data, but your application, your metrics, and so on.
Right. And this is also a natural outgrowth. New Relic has been around for a hot minute, and we started off with a few different data types and a few different data stores, but that's grown as our capabilities have grown, and so this just brings it back to the ability to relate all these disparate pieces of data that we're storing and then provide an even richer view. So I love that. What else are we doing to address this stuff that we talked about just a minute ago? Like what other features or enhancements?
Yeah, the next feature, which we're also very excited about, it is kind of a subset of joins, but we're introducing lookup tables. And what that is the ability to take a CSV file up to 4 megabytes, 20,000 rows, and upload that into New Relic. So say you have a list of all the items on your shelf. You're a retailer, and you have, some 5,000 items, and you have all these item IDs. So in your actual database, you see this very long string of item IDs, and you can't present that. You can't show that in a dashboard to say, oh, it looks like item 1QF5 has the most sales. But what you can do is you can upload a CSV file that simply has the ID and the name of that item and do a lookup to join those two tables together. And now you can see, oh, my bubblegum sales are at the top. We have a peak here. It's very readable. So this enrichment that Ralph was talking about is exactly what we're excited about, because you don't always have the data cleaned up and perfect in New Relic, but here you can add on this CSV file to enrich it and make it easy to read.
And for folks who are watching this and wondering, like, well, why? You upload data all the time. Why is that a big deal? I run into this myself, where I had a relatively static set of information that I wanted to bring into New Relic, and what would happen is no matter which way I tried to do it, however I treated it, it would get uploaded repeatedly. Whether it was once, if I set the periodicity, if I set the timing to once a day, it would still upload that data as if it was new, but it's not. Once a day, and it would roll off and stuff like that. So this is how to upload and use a fairly static set of data, as you say, as a lookup. And that really is incredibly useful, especially with monitoring and observability data along the way. Fabulous. And Ralph, you mentioned GEO-IP. Any secret sauce that we want to hear about before we take a look at it?
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about, honestly, the joins and lookups thing. Even just for me as a PM, I use it all the time. I've not yet done a triply nested join, Alex. You gotta help me out. You gotta help me through that one.
You'll get
But
there.
I'll get there. But
Stretch. Remember, stretch, hydrate, and yeah,
yes,
and then take a shot at it.
I'll do it right after my run this weekend.
There you go.
But I think the idea of taking, like you said, Leon, there's that data you just want to. It's static. You want to get it in there, and it's not really something it's meant to be regularly coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I think with lookups, somebody like me who is no longer an engineer, but has some data that's pretty useful. I don't have to call an API. I don't have to do something on a regular basis to get events that come in there, and I'm sure they're going to be available in the time frame I'm querying. No, I can just take my spreadsheet, and I got lots of spreadsheets. I can take my spreadsheet and I can put that in New Relic. And then I've got the data I need whenever I need it. And so I think it's really powerful for people who aren't fully technical users, who aren't necessarily engineers, but they need to make use of data that New Relic has, because a lot of that data, whether it's in logs or elsewhere, is really kind of business data.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I also used to do one query in New Relic, export it to a spreadsheet, do another one, put that in another tab, and then do a bunch of Excel stuff on it. Now I can just do my join and I'm done. So that's pretty great.
It's awesome.
So yeah, talking about GEO-IP, this is another one where we're enhancing the data that you've already got. Yeah, I could take a query where, again, I've got a bunch of IP addresses and I need to figure out, well, what does this mean? Are these, let's say these are all my users, and I want to make sure that they're logging in from the places I expect them to be logging in from, and not North Korea.
Right.
So I could take that data and I could sort of export it, and I could do a bunch of like lookups on where those IP addresses are located. But now instead, I can just go into New Relic, configure a parsing rule on my logs, and say, all right, my IP addresses are here. Take those out, and then I want you to look up the country and the city. That's all I really need. It'll add those attributes to my logs, and now I can just use them everywhere, every time I query against that data. So set it up once, and then it's good. You've got the enriched data, and you can make use of it in dashboards. You make use of it in Logs UI, everywhere.
Cool. All right, so I need to see all of it. I mean, this is really nice. It is my favorite type of monitoring and observability enhancement, which is it is, not simplistic, but it is simple and elegant, and it focuses on a particular pain point. And as soon as you see it, you know how much you need it. So I want to take a look here. So let's dive into the demo. Here we go. So looks like Alex is ready to go with SubQuery joins. Talk us through this.
Yeah, so I first just wanted to give a quick overview of how to write a SubQuery join. Not everyone is a NERCL master like some of the people on our team. So wanted to just walk through this nice and easy. But SubQuery join consists of essentially two things. You need two events or two data sets that you're calling, and a primary key. So first you're going to say from, and then the first event. It could be logs, metrics, so on. Right after the from, you need to have the join, and you write join, and then you write the subquery within that. So you're saying from the second data set or second event, process sample, and our audit, things like that. And then lastly, you have the key. So you can say on, and then the key that is in both of those sets. So container ID is one you could use, things like that. Then you have, the select blank from, where, all that following. Mm-hmm. The key thing to note is that the subquery does have 2,000 result limit. So you usually want to say limit max within that subquery, but there's still that limit there. And the join can be, it defaults to an inner join, but if you want, you could say, inner join, or you could say left join. So that's just the basics. So let's get right into it.
Yeah.
So what I have here is this is my infrastructure data. So this is the average CPU of all of these containers. And you'll see that, I'm passing by container ID. Similarly, I have all this data on my transaction of the how long each of these containers, how long the website took. So I have container ID for both. And what if I want to say, what happens, find all the times where my transactions are really slow and the page is really slow. Is there a correlation to the CPU percentage? So let's compare those two with this query. So I'll walk through this to say, you're saying from transaction. Now you're joining, and here's this inner subquery here. You're saying, give me the data from the process sample, give me the average CPU, call it CPU. And now, and the on is container ID. Because they're both named the same thing, I can just say on container ID. If they were named something different, you'd say container ID equals, and whatever the different namings were, but they're the exact same field that you can combine. But this is a shorthand here. And then lastly, when you have, what I'm saying here is that, okay, give me the average duration, and now give me my latest CPU. And why that's latest is that when you have the inner query, it's going to already give you the average value. And this is already, an average value. You don't want to sum up the average of the sums. So right. You're essentially, saying, give me from one query, this outer query, give me the average duration, and then give me my CPU. And from this, I can see, oh, look, looks like the ratio of this container is really high. Looks like there's a really high duration, or it's taking a long time, and the CPO is very low. We could look into that more and find out what's causing this.
Very cool. I like it.
So this hasn't been able to be done before, and it's something that, here's the first example. Also go with the second example. And We introduced commenting, so you can actually comment out some of this data. So let's comment out some data we have right now. So right now, let's take the, let's say just count star of our transaction. So here is the count of all the transactions across all of our applications. Looks like routing service is really high up there. Now we also have on this inner query transaction error. And this is all the cases where we had an error from the transaction. So if we could take the total errors and divide by the total count, we get an error percentage. And so by combining this data, we can write this sentence here saying, okay, give me my error count, the latest error count, again, using latest, or 0, because if there's no data, it's not going to be there. Again, and here we're using a left join because not every transaction has an error. If there was no error, it wouldn't be in that list. And the inner join would get rid of that data.
Right.
And now then you're dividing by the total count. And this is giving you your error percentage, which wasn't possible before. This is fantastic. I know that, with this query, I can see, looks like mobile API has about 30% error rates. That
seems bad, man. Yeah.
That seems pretty bad.
Someone needs to get on that.
I know. Luckily, this is our demo account, so this is not live data.
Demos have to be bad, otherwise they're boring demos.
Yes, exactly. What's interesting is that we found from a lot of customers, not all data is stored in the same place. You could have your error data, you could have your session data, you could have all this data that's stored in different places, but you didn't have a way to combine it until today.
Very cool. I love it.
So that is joins.
Right. And are we going to take a look at the lookup tables now?
We are.
Or do we? Okay, then dive in. I want to see it.
Diving right in. So let me show you where you can find lookup tables today. So when you go to New Relic, you want to click on Logs, and Logs is going to take you to this other bar, which if we expand it, we'll see that this bottom one, which will start appearing, is Lookup Tables. So you click into this, and each lookup table is specific to an account. So it looks like the account, the demo account we're in today has these 4 lookup tables. So, see examples. Hey, looks like status codes is one of them, translating status codes to readable names. We got some bad IPs here and some bad IPs here, and then item names.
They're not bad. They're shady.
They're shady, exactly. So this is how you do it. You'd say add table. If I wanted to add, status codes 2, I could add that in. I have this file here, which has all the status codes. So a 100, is informational, and 101 also informational, but that gets more into the definition. I'm not as technical. I didn't know what all these numbers were, so it's great to have something that could just translate it for me to say, 200 is, all 200s are successes, or if it's, 404, it's a client error not found. So what I can do is I can go here, put a description if I want, and I can just drag and drop the status codes table in here. You'll see it's the max has to be 2 megabytes, so this is very small, which is great. And then you can click add. So I'm not going to add it. We already have a table here, but I just wanted to show you how that works. Once this table is uploaded, you can go in and I'll show this actually, by itself. You can go in and just say from lookup status code table and give me all my values. And here you have a table that you don't have to re-upload like you said before. It's a table that's static. It's very easy to query. It actually has a row limit of 20,000. So because this is a static table, our row limits for lookup are 20,000, which is a great improvement. And you can see all the data here. So let's see how we actually write a query to incorporate this. This is a query with everything commented out of all the status codes of our transaction. Looks like we have a lot of 200s. That's great. But what is a 200? I don't know. So what we can do is we can join, and then the subquery is a lookup query. and it says lookup status code table. Make sure to name everything you need. Make sure you name the key that you need to have. So in this case, status code from the inner query is going to match HTTP status code from the outer query. And with that, instead of using status code, I just want to have this summary. And let's keep status code in there as well, just to see what they are. And there you go. You could have readable words of what a success was, the client error, redirection, and the numbers it corresponds to. It's just so much easier to have this table because this list of status codes isn't going to change. These are pretty set in stone. So why would you have to translate these over and over, upload the table, and now someone can go in and say, hey, how many successes did I have, or how many unsuccessful transactions did I have?
Nice. I love this.
One thing that's cool about this for if you're logging data, lots of times people log IDs or codes or short pieces of information. And this is awesome to not have to spell out everything you might want to refer to in your logs, and just look it up with a lookup table later. I know people who are excited about saving some money on how much log storage they have. Like, this is great. I'll just store that ID. I'll look up the novella that I really want to refer to. I'll put that in a lookup table. I don't have to store every byte of that over and over and over and over and over again. So it's a pretty nice kind of cost savings feature. Not to mention just thing that can help you keep one source of truth for these kinds of values.
Very true.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get into a little more complex log example coming up here. So what we have here, let's just start with the message. What we have here is all of the logs that start with post to cart. So this is an example of someone having each log line is the item of in a retail store, as well as the URL of where the item was purchased from and the price of that item. So it'd be great to pull out all those features, say here are the items that are giving us the most revenue, and to chart that out. But these items, if you can see, here's the URL, here's this item ID. This item ID is this really long number. We use this anchor parse, which is a shorter version of regex capture, and simply parse out the URL, the item ID, and the price, which there's other videos on anchor parse. I love this function. So we pulled out item ID, and now we can see, okay, here are all the item IDs, and we're faceting on the count of how many of these items are people purchasing. So now we're saying, well, I can't do much with this ID. I don't know what it is. I don't know, is it gumball or is it a action figure?
Right.
So what we've added is this lookup table of all of the item IDs and the names that they translate to. And again, we're selecting item ID, the name, where we named it the same thing, so it's now item ID. It's great that you could name item ID in the outer table and then join it based on that key from the inner table. All this is all interconnected. So by doing this, we can now say, all right, I don't want the ID, I want the name. We run this, and there you go. Looks like Slinky and yo-yos are the top of things that we are purchasing. And this is way, way easier to read and to understand. We've seen customers who have had store IDs, and you don't know which store that is, but by translating it, this is the store in San Francisco. This is the store in Nebraska. It's so much easier to enrich your data when these IDs are, static, and all you need to do is enrich it with this lookup table.
Right. I'm actually excited for when people are watching this video and only cut in at this part, and they're all going to start calling and asking for new Relic branded slinkies.
Oh,
Just,
yeah.
like completely out of context. But that may not be the most important part. Yeah. So again, lookup tables, that static information that enriches, whatever the ongoing transient data is incredibly important for an observability tool in a lot of ways. So these are amazing examples. And you mentioned, the store in Iowa, the store in California, whatever it is, which seems like we're sort of segueing into geolocation, but I don't want to push it. So is there anything else we want to see before we take a look at the GEO-IP stuff?
I think we can jump to GEO-IP. I just like to highlight, again, your logs, they can be unstructured. They can have all this data in different places, but using new functions like anchor parse, you parse out the fields you want.
Right.
You create a lookup table. You make it readable. You can add all this type of business value or business data to your telemetry data, which is making it much more powerful.
And we'll put a link to the previous changelog where we go into those query enhancements where we talk about the A-parse and a few of the other elements, because that was a really, really, first of all, it was a fun conversation. But second of all, those improvements were a game changer for us and for our customers at the time. So I appreciate it. Okay, Ralph, you want to take us through some of the GEO-IP stuff?
I do.
Okay, well, here we go.
So let's do it. So imagine you've got some logs from your CDN, right? And you've got a bunch of traffic that's coming through your CDN, and you're wondering, all right, where's my traffic coming from? Does this CDN I'm using, is it kind of adequately serving the points of presence that I have, that I need people to be able to access? And so these logs I'm looking at, these are like something you might kind of get out of something like Cloudflare or something like that. So I've just got, all right, here's my traffic broken down by IP address, the ones that have an IP address in them. And this is interesting, but I can't really answer questions about like, where are these places in the world?
Right.
And that's just kind of as a starting point. So GEO-IP is going to help us solve that problem. And so I'm going to take these logs and I'm going to add some geographical information to them. So I'm going to look for the logs where I have that client IP address where it's not null. I'll just take that part of my query and I'll go into this logs area and I'll create a parsing rule, because I'm going to be parsing IP addresses out, using that to go and look up geography stuff and add that in. So I'll create a new rule and I'll get this dialog that'll help me fill that out. So this is going to be like, in this case, I got Cloudflare. I'm going to get that client IP address field. I'm going to parse that one, and I'm going to look for the places where I have that IP address. So this is my little snippet of NERCL that says, all right, look for logs that match this. And then I get a few logs. And these are the client IP fields that I parse out of a selection of those logs. So I'll pick one of those to use as an example as I write my parsing rule. So if I go and look up 62.207, etc., and then I use this parsing rule, and this is a little bit of an eye chart to look at, but I'm going to do a geo lookup, and then I'm going to look up the IP address called client IP, and then I'm going to add all these fields out of that geo lookup. I have a few I can choose from, but I'm going to add pretty much all of them. And if I do that, then this is what I'll get kind of added on to all of my log lines that have a client IP address. City, country, latitude, longitude, region is like the state or the province, and all that. So that'll start getting added to any logs that come in after I enable this rule. And we've got some documentation that kind of walks you through how to do that, what fields are available.
That was exactly going to be my question. Was I presume we tell people exactly how to do this, because there's some pretty interesting commands over there, but not intuitive.
Yeah. So this is all using the Grok regular expression syntax that we use for parsing things out of logs.
Yeah.
And so once you do that, logs come in with those IP addresses, they'll get that info. And so then I can do stuff like this, where I can go and, again, I'm looking for places where I have an IP address. And now I can just go and use those new attributes. I've now got country name, I've got country code. So I can break down all my traffic by what country is the traffic coming from.
Right.
So these are my top countries. And I might learn something. I might learn that I wasn't expecting to have so much traffic from Japan. I wonder why we're so big in Japan. And so that gives you some really it's a whole set of questions you can answer now.
The new Relic Slinkies. I'm going to say that that's probably what's doing it, but that's just my guess.
It's definitely it.
It's the
Now,
yo-yos, man. The yo-yos are
The
causing it.
yo-yos. Yeah. The branded yo-yos.
now, see, because all we need is now we need to make sure we have those item IDs in our logs, and we can go look it up, and we can find out which item is most popular in Japan. That's the next question. So this is pretty exciting, and we've got lots of customers making use of it today for, again, there's retail use cases, there's cases for understanding where your CDN traffic is coming from, so you can optimize. Is your CDN provider really the one you want? Has it got the capabilities you need? There's some interesting kind of like security or fraud detection use cases that you could touch on. So
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
It's amazing. I really, these are simple, they're clear, they address a specific pain point, and there's a little bit of syntax, but what doesn't have a little bit of syntax? But once you have it, they're really easy to implement, and that's part of what I love about this entire solution. So, all right, wonderful. All right, I think that takes us. Is anything else to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we can add as well is there is a query that I have that if you want to share that screen back over to me.
Yeah.
So this query right here,
not all.
that's not all. It's combining all three in one. And I think this is the part that we really want to emphasize, that these are not all separate. You use a join query by itself. You use a lookup table by itself. You use the GEO-IP enrichment by itself. You can use all three. And here we have an example. We go in logs. We look at client IP. And if we kind of go back in time, we were able to say, all right, give me all of the client names. And here, instead of having IP, great. Here's the country names of all of these IPs, and we can find out where we're getting the most logs from, which is fantastic. But what if we wanted to find all the places where we had unsuccessful logs? We could go in and say we'll make sure the status code isn't anything like a 200 or. But what we can also do is we can say, all right, let's join that status code table we had from the very beginning.
Uh-huh.
Let's go back, and now we have all the status codes, and we can say, hey, wherever the summary isn't successful, let me know. And we can also add in the summary here, as well as let's get that definition that has a little more detail. And from here, this gives us a full view of all of our unsuccessful queries, because status summary is not successful, where they're coming from. So it looks like the US has the most, about 13,000, and what they are. It's a client error, and it's not found. So this combines everything. It combines joins, it combines lookups, and it combines GEO-IP.
That's fantastic. And to the underlying point of all monitoring and observability, what we're really doing is we're building solutions that help you, find and surface ideas, issues faster before they become necessarily critical, that you can begin to dig in and say, all right, let me ask some meaningful questions. Let me reason about my data in ways that every customer understands about their data, but sometimes doesn't have the flexibility to do. So I really, really appreciate that. All right, anything else before we roll along? All right, then I think that we are in what I affectionately call the lightning round, which is, where we get to talk about like whatever thoughts come up. I have two. One, all that time you spent learning regular expressions, not a waste of time. I have said this multiple times on Changelog, but I just feel like a lot of people regret those hours of learning regular expressions, and it is a superpower, and so you shouldn't feel bad about it. But I think more importantly is that, here at New Relic, we trust our users to understand their data, and we trust them to understand it in many cases better than we would understand it, even though we live in data all the time. We really trust that our users really have a better idea of what that data is and what it might need to do, and our job is simply to facilitate and make it easy to get to it. So that was my final thought. Alex, got any last thoughts to leave with us before we wrap this up?
Yeah, to add on to that, I think, customers really need to understand their data to make sure everything's up and running, everything's going smoothly. And I think the benefit with a lot of things we're releasing is that we're just providing the tools. We don't, there's so many permutations of how you can join or join a join or do that, triple join. But we don't know all the ways that you can do this data, but we want to make sure all the tools are available so that someone can have data that isn't in the right format or is stored in different ways, but the tools to help you parse out what you need to label it in the ways that are readable. I think that's going to be very, very helpful because no two data is the same. And it's going to be good to have these additional tools to really dig into, what issues you have or some learnings about how your company's running.
Nice. Okay, Ralph, bring us home.
You got it. So I think that all that there's so much data that you can collect about your systems, and the key thing to do when you're choosing, what kind of observability tools to have is like which one is going to give you the most value out of all that data. And I think everything we're talking about here today means that, if you have one set of data, that's great. But now if you have two, and you have these tools, now the value of that data starts to be multiplied, because now you can do more things to bring it together. If your logs are making your metrics better and your metrics are making your events better, like that just means by bringing all of that data into one place where you have these kinds of tools, then everything that you're sending and that you're storing and that you're instrumenting to get, all of that just has more value. And that's really, like, I think a big part of our mission is to create a product where our customers can get the most value of all of that data that they are, they're spending time to collect it, and they're going to have to spend time to use it for to make their businesses better. We want to make that like the best use of their time. We want to make every piece of that data super valuable.
Nice. All right. I want to thank both of you for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules to talk with us here on Changelog. And I can't wait to have you both back. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon.
And I also want to thank everyone watching. There is an overwhelming choice of video content to binge on these days, and we at New Relic want to thank you for spending some of your precious bingeable time with us today. If you've enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe so you can get notifications when new episodes drop. For New Relic Changelog, I'm Leon Adato.